What's going on, everyone? It's Bales, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy video on the channel. So we've got a bit of a different one today. We've got a double upload today. So obviously we've got their usual trade talk video that will be on in a few hours' time at the normal time of 5 p.m. Eastern time and 3 p.m. Western Standard Time. But I thought I'd do a bit of a different video. Do a best 22. What I think will be the best 22 for the remainder of the season. Sort of taking in what players have done to start the season, and then what I think they can do to end the season. A couple of guys I haven't put in the 22. You're probably going to wonder sort of why I've left them out and stuff. But I'll go through all that, sort of go through all the positions. And I'll tell you sort of why I'll put them in and sort of the order. So the best way I'm going to do it is just favourite the players in each position. And then we'll just go the favourites, and I'll be able to tell you who and then we'll be able to show you sort of after who's in it. So I think that's the best way to do it. I haven't found another way to do it, but there you go. So, but yeah, let's get into it. But as always, before we do, if you are enjoying the content around here, make sure you do smash a big thumbs up on the video. If you do sort of like these sort of individual videos and might want to see more of it maybe next year and whatever, then sort of let me know in the comments as well what your thoughts are, and make sure you smash a like on the video. And also make sure you subscribe to the channel. So again, thank you guys very much for smashing out the 2.5k subs. It's a big milestone, so thank you very much for that. Obviously, now our next big goal is 3K, so we got 500 to go before the end of the season. If we can get there, that'd be fantastic. I'm not sure we will, but if we do, then that'd be fantastic. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. So we'll start off with defense. So we'll go to defenders here, and I'll let you know who I'll be going and why. So at D1, I think it's no shockers. I've got Nick Dacos there at D1. So the reason I've got him there is just, it's more for just the safety. Like there's the other guys on the list, there's a question mark or two on really on most people, or sort of question on role and what they're doing moving forward. So I think Dacos is set. He's midfielder, killing it at the moment. Obviously got 98 in his last game against North. Got tagged a bit in that game, but had a good second half to get there. Had a poor one before that against Melbourne, but I just think that he's just as rock solid as anyone. His average is 104. It's a bit lower, but I fully expect him to be the D1 for the remainder of the season. To be honest, and after this, it's so hard to rank these defenders, because I'm looking here at my list. I've got a good, 13 names here that could easily be there, and there's probably a couple that I probably could have easily put in here. So we're just going to do our top 6, and I'll let you know who's in the mix. At D2, I've got Harry Sheezel. The reason I've gone for Harry Sheezel is because even in this role of him playing more forward of the ball, he's not even having that many CBAs, but he's still pumping out hundreds, right? So he moved forward. I'm trying to think, when did he move forward? Was it against the Bombers? I think it was against the Bombers, because Gold Coast, he had a lower score, and I'm pretty sure I traded him out at this point here. So from essentially, it would have been from maybe round 9 onwards. It's somewhere around here. But anyway, besides that game against Gold Coast in Darwin, he's been very solid and consistent. His next, 5 games, he's produced 400s. 2 of them over 110, a couple of lower hundreds, and then a 99. So he's had a lower score of 99 in this role. I just think he's just solid as they come, and that's why I've got him at number 2. Just because the guy that I'm going to have at 3, I probably had more confidence in, but he's had a few down weeks. And by that, I'm going to say Luke Ryan. So I've still got Luke Ryan as my D3 for the remainder of the season. I know there's question marks over the last 2 games. Freo haven't chipped the ball back as much. Ryan hasn't got involved, and he's only scored the 70 and the 68. I just think he's got Sydney this week. Jordan will get tagged in this game. I expect Ryan to get a bit more of the ball. And then this run after, he's got Richmond, Hawthorn, Melbourne, West Coast. I like that run. Even Essendon, Geelong. Giants Port's a bit tougher to finish. But I just think this run here, especially these 3, I think he could put up some big scores. So I've still got him as my D3, but it could literally be as early as next week. He might not even be in the 6 if he puts up another bad score, because the confidence will be gone. I sort of want to back him because he's been so good for most of the year, bar 2 weeks. So for me, I'll keep him there at D3. At D4, I've got Nick Martin. And again, this is just more from what he's done all year. Like, he's averaged 108 for the year. He's played forward a bit more the last few weeks. Hasn't played much defence at all. but he's still putting up solid scores. Like he's gone, I think he was forward against Carlton, he got a 120 and 93. Gold Coast got 97. He played sort of everywhere that game, but he's just been solid, consistent. He's only had one score below 90, and that was an 85. He's just solid. And his run's pretty decent to finish the year. Geelong, Collingwood, Melbourne, Adelaide, St Kilda, Freo, Gold Coast, Sydney, Brisbane. Those last two, again, are a bit trickier, but the rest of them are pretty good. So, and he plays high time on ground as well. I'm still pretty comfortable with Nick Martin being a top 6, and I've got him at number 4. This is where I've gone different. So, normally, I would go probably Lachie Whitfield and then Hayden Young to round out the 6, because they're the most probably common, most common 6 defenders. But I'm actually going to go 2 bit more unique players here in these last 2 spots. And the first one I'm going to be doing is Nick Newman. And people are probably thinking, why have you got him as year D5? And the reason why is because we saw it last year. He came home like a steam train. He was essentially the highest averaging player for the back part of that, your back 5 weeks or whatever. He's been very good since round 8, and that almost coincides. Williams went back behind as a forward in round 10, but he hasn't gone. He's only had the one score below 90 in being the 87 against Essendon, but it's been a pretty tough run. Like Melbourne was good, Sydney's tough, Gold Coast is tougher as well. Port Adelaide's tough, Essendon isn't easy either, and Geelong are, I think, fairly neutral. His run to finish the year though is pretty good. It's a bit mixed around here. So Richmond's great, Giants tough, Bulldogs Kent is normally pretty friendly, North is a good matchup, Port's tricky. Then you've got Collingwood, Hawthorn, West Coast, St Kilda. Those final 4 games are insanely good. They are so good for defenders, and I feel like Newman could average 105 for the remainder of the season or up to there, and that's why I've got him in my top 6. As I said, a few guys a bit stiff to miss out. And at number 6, I'm going to go Max Holmes as a bit of a different one as well. So the reason, again, I've got him here is, again, his run for the remainder of the season is very good. So he's not going to get the tag, I don't think. They're going to go to Stewart. He's gone essentially 100 in every game bar 1 against Sydney, which is tough at the SCG especially. But again, his run, Essendon, Hawthorn, Collingwood, Bulldogs, North, Adelaide, Freo, St Kilda, West Coast. That's a great run. Again, Essendon's about probably the only real tricky game. And Freo have been giving up points as well of late, and they would have normally been tricky. But every other game there is pretty good. So for me, I think Max Holmes is going to be a top 6 defender on the way home. And it will be interesting to see, looking back at this. Might even do a recap maybe potentially at the end of the year and see how I went for players here. But the guys I've got in the mix, I've got a fair few. So I'll quickly rattle off a few names here when this goes off screen. There we go. So in the mix, I've got obviously Lachie Whitfield. For me, he's in the mix. He's obviously been very, very good last few weeks. The only reason I didn't have him in the 6 was just because his run is a bit mixed. So he's been great last 3 weeks, last 5 weeks really. But his run, he's got Carlton in there, could be a Chincotta. Well, I expect to be a Chincotta tag. Round 19, I wouldn't be surprised if David Swallow ran with him in this game here. Melbourne, Hawthorn are good. Brisbane is tricky. Freo, a Dogs. So it's a little bit sort of hit and miss. Like Dogs is good, Freo's good, Hawthorn, Melbourne are decent, Richmond's good, Crows I think expecting to go pretty well. So, and again, he could easily be in there, right? And I own him, so I want him to be a top 6 defender, but I just think I've just got him outside because of that. Hayden Young is also in the mix, and it sounds bad leaving a guy like a Whitfield and Hayden Young out of the top 6 because they've just been so good for us this year, but I think it's probably more to do with, again, the run. He's got Port and Giants finish the year. Like Geelong, obviously, I think that'll be a good game for him. Essendon's tough. Sydney's tough as well. He's got a good run for 3 weeks. Obviously, we'd mentioned with Luke Ryan here, and even West Coast as well is pretty good as well. So he's just, probably just because he doesn't have that. But then again, Max Holmes has another ceiling. That's what I was going to say. But it feels very, very bad. And I know people are probably going to say in the comments that how can you leave Hayden Young and Whitfield out? It doesn't feel great leaving him out, but there are still plenty of others I could put in here. Jordan Clark, another one that I could easily have in here. And he's got a great run as well. But with Freo's change in game style, is that going to help Jordan Clark and hinder Luke Ryan? Is it going to hinder both? Are they going to go back to what they're doing? So probably just the uncertainty with him, and just because there's so many good defenders there. Like, I can't leave Dacos, Sheasel, Martin really out, I don't think. Luke Ryan, I think, is average 160. I can't leave him out. And then it's probably Newman and Holmes are the two interchangeable positions for me that you could change. And there's probably a couple more here that I'd probably leave in. I think the St Kilda duo of Nasiah, Wanganeen Miller and Jack Sinclair could be in there. They play every game at Marvel bar one to finish the year. They've just got a few tricky games on the run home. That's the only reason I don't have them in there. But 98, 97 average, they've been very, very good and have got a case to be in there as well. And Jack Crisp as well. If I knew that he was going to play midfield for the remainder of the season, he would be number 5 for me, I think, in the defenders. I think he'd be in my top 5. It's just with the uncertainty with De Goey and Pendlebury coming back. But then again, I do sort of think that they might even put De Goey a bit more forward and Pendle sort of wherever they need him. So I still think there's a very real possibility that Jack Crisp is still a midfielder for the remainder of the season. And if that's the case, he would be my top 6. So he could be a guy that would sneak in there. And yeah, so I don't believe I've... Oh, and actually, then the other one was Bailey Dale as well, just because he's been very, very good outside of, obviously, the sub game. The forward game, I think he'd be averaging over 100 if it wasn't for those two. So, yeah, for me, Dale is also a solid option. And yeah, like Houston and Duggan are probably the only high averaging players I could put in there. But Houston, I still don't trust. I know he's got Saints this week, could be a good target, but I just fully trust him as an option to bring in. So... or for the rest of the season as a top 6. Moving to the midfield, I've got 10 names here in the midfield that I'm a fan of. Yeah, there's a host of players that could easily have a good second half of the year, but I'll go through the ones I've got. So at number 1, I've got Errol Goulden. So Errol Goulden for me, you got to put him, I think, number 1 now. He's averaging 113. He is the highest averaging midfielder so far for the season. Again, since that Richmond game in round 3, he's been ultra consistent. Only 2 scores below 100. I've mentioned it a lot of times on the channel, and you guys have probably heard me say it a lot. 6 free kicks in one of those 90s. And then you got 98 against Giants when it was wet. So those two games, there is a reasons why. Again, only 3 marks in that wet game, 6 free kicks against. If it wasn't for that, he would have gone over 100 in both these games. His last 5 as well have been great, all over 115. The last 3 have been over 127. And he plays such high time on ground. I just can't see how he's not going to be a top 8 midfielder, and I've got him as my M1. So if you don't have him, it's going to be hard to bring him in. And I think if you're wanting to be competing with the top 100, top 1,000, you need to have Goulden in your side. And I think the top 1,000, essentially everyone's got Goulden anyway. So if you're outside top 1,000 and don't have him, you either need to get him in or I don't know, just don't watch Sydney games because he's absolutely dominating at the moment. At my M2 spot, I've got Zach Merritt. He's just, again, safe. He just gets it done every week. Even he got tagged on the weekend by Jinby, still got it done. And again, he's got a good run. I should have gone to the fixture stats for the whole time. But again, he's got a great run. Only 1 game outside of Melbourne on the run home. That's against Brisbane in the final round. Again, Geelong, Collingwood, Melbourne, Adelaide, St Kilda, Freo, like all good matchups. A tough sort of 3 to finish in Gold Coast, Sydney and Brisbane, but like, at least those 2 at Marvel. So I think I would expect probably a Jordan to... It'd be interesting. Would Jordan go to a Zach Merritt, or would he go to a Nick Martin? That'd be interesting to see. You probably go to Zach Merritt, but then again, I feel like Jordan could probably match up well against Nick Martin. So, but it'd be interesting. But anyway, I think Merritt is just safe, and that's why I've got him as my M2. And this guy, the guy that's next, I could have easily had an M2, and I was probably contemplating whether I put him at M2 to finish the year, and it's Marcus Bontempelli, which makes me happy because I did start with him. I think Bont's that guy that we don't start, but you bring in around the buys or maybe after like 6 or 7 weeks. His last 3 weeks have been very good. 2 scores, 159, 142, 93 mixed in between where he's getting tagged by Berry. He's kicked 8 goals in his last 3 games. He's dominating at the moment. He's got North this week. I expect to have another good game. Then a tough month. I expect a Willem Drew tag against Port Adelaide. Drew's done it in the past and it's worked. Carlton, George Hill probably has to go with him. I can't imagine Shinkoda would go with him. It's just a bad sort of match up there. Geelong, they didn't tag him early in the year, but Blitzarves I would sort of find hard to think that he won't go to him after. I think the Dogs won that game from memory, and Bont obviously dominated. So I would imagine there. Sydney, does Jordan go to him? I'm not sure. Can he go with Bont? I'm not sure. Final month is okay. Melbourne, Adelaide, North, and then Giants at Mars. You could trade that week because I think Giants have had Bont's number the last few matchups. But for me, Bont has just been so good and he's really getting going now. So I'd be putting Bont at 3. Number 4 again, and from this point on, there are a lot of names where I could put them higher or not. But actually, I didn't favourite Bont there. There we go. So at number 4, I've got a guy I currently don't own, and I think where is he? Total points, sort by average, that would be better. It's Sam Walsh, there he is. So Sam Walsh, I got number 4, and again, just more consistency. I think the midfielders, it's the thing, all these guys are showing ceilings, but they're also very consistent. Walsh obviously had the 2 games against Sydney with the 68 and then Essendon with 79, but outside of that, he's been really good. Every time he's gone 100 actually since round 9, he's actually gone over 110, which has been really good, sort of showing that bit more of a ceiling. His tackle and mark numbers have increased, obviously, since his first few games. He wasn't marking it much, but he's starting to get a little bit more involved in that. Playing low time on ground, which is interesting. 72% there as well. A few 70s there. 80% on the weekend. But Richmond this week, good matchup. Giants, tougher. Bulldogs, I think, is still fine for Walsh. North, Port, good month to finish. It's just a bit mixed for the next month or so. But I think that finish to the end of the year is really good, and I think you're going to want to have Walsh in your side. So currently, I've got him at number 4. Number 5, I've got Jordan Dawson. Crows have got a tough run home, but I just think wherever he plays, he's going to score well, and I think he's got as a captain, he's going to keep going. Hard to tag, so he can go forward. He sort of roams around everywhere. So for me, I've got Dawson at 5. I've got Caleb Sarong at number 6, and if it wasn't for his last few poor weeks, he would be my top 4. He probably would be number 4. I just the only thing I worry with Caleb Sarong is he hasn't put up since from round 9 onwards, he hasn't gone over 107. And he's been consistent, which has been good, and he's still a top 8 mid in my eyes, but he's just been consistent and not hitting any big numbers. Again, Richmond, Hawthorn, Melbourne, West Coast, he could put up a big ceiling score in one of those 4 games. Obviously against Richmond, he scored 141, so could be a few there. It's just that, I guess he's just bumped down a little bit because if you look at all those guys I've got over him, Dawson, Bont, Walsh, Merritt, Goulden, they've all got big ceilings, and Merritt, they've all got big ceilings, so that's why I've got them ahead of Sarong. And then the last 2 are guys that are very underappreciated, I think, and are consistent. So Adam Treloar is number 7, averaging 109 for the year, and he's not really going to get tagged much with Bont there, so goes under the radar. Obviously, the fitness is always concerned, right? But I just think Treloar has done enough this year that we've got to take notice now, and we've got to bring him in. So for me, if Bont's getting the attention, Treloar's going to run right. And then at number 8, I've got Tim Taranto. Obviously, he was injured for a fair bit in the middle of the season, but now he's back. He's got a bit of a tricky next few games. But his end to the season is very, very nice, and you're going to want him in your side. So he's got Carlton, Freo, Giants, Port next month. Tough month coming up. Then he's got Collingwood, North, St Kilda, Hawthorn, Gold Coast to finish the year. That's a very good last month, so I'm a big fan of Taranto. I would jump on him now if you have the chance to get him in, and there's a bit of a pot as well. Not highly owned at all. So for me, Taranto is a good pick there. The only 2 I've got in the mix that I sort of feel safe to put in the mix here is Josh Dunkley, who obviously is probably the one that's stiff to not be in the 8. I just think, and he could be in there instead of Taranto or Treloar, right? I just think that he had that 151 against Gold Coast, but besides that, hasn't really done, again, can't really be too, he's gone 100 in most games, he had that poor patch back-to-back games against the Dogs and St Kilda, but you would have imagined he probably would have gone well in those 2. But 118 on the weekend was better. A lot of handballs in that game. He's one that's very, very stiff to miss out. And his run is a bit mixed as well. Got some good matchups, got some tough matchups. I think Dunkley's fixture proof anyway. He's not going to get the tag. Got a good history against Melbourne as well. There you go. So, he's one that could go in instead of Taranto or Treloar. I had him just outside just because I don't think he's hit as much of those ceiling scores as what the other guys have as well. So that's why I've got him just outside. And then the guy that's probably a little bit down the list, he's only had the one good score of late, is Tom Green. There's an argument that you could look at and go, that whole time he's injured and those low scores were all for the injury and tags, and the back half of it could go quite well. I've put him in the mix because I think he could sneak in there. I don't have him in there at the moment. I think it's right not to have him in there. He's obviously had that injured game and been a bit poor in the middle, but he had a good game on the weekend against Sydney, 127. Got the Crows this week. I anticipate he's going to have a very, very good game there. And the Crows could have a tough night at the office with Green and Whitfield and Toby Green and all those great players the Giants have got. So it'll be interesting, but I think Tom Green is a guy to that'll be sort of in and around the mark. I didn't have anyone else really in the mix. Like, obviously, Butters could be, but I expect a lot of tags to go to him. Jack Steele's been poor, only 200 since I ran 6, so I don't have him in the mix at the moment. Could come back into it if he starts going well. Anderson's 2 up and down for me. Funny enough, Crouchy could even have been in the mix if he wasn't injured. And then Roy Ledd's probably one to keep an eye on. Just if he stays at half back, he might sort of go quite well at the back part of the year. But besides that, that's probably all the names there. Like, 2 put up a good score, but I couldn't put him in the mix or anything like that. So for me, they're the 10 names in the midfield that I would have. Moving to the rucks, I think there's 5 names. There's 5 names that have been really good. Gawn's number 1. Not really much more to add with him, averaging just under 120 for the season, and he's been the clear number 1 averaging player for the season, so I think he's got to be number 1. I've still got Ryan Marshall number 2. And he's averaging 111 for the year. Obviously, massively boosted by those 2 massive scores back-to-back in the middle of the year. He's got Port this week. I expect a big score there. He's actually got a pretty good month coming up as well. He scored 105 with Tom Campbell in the team. If Tom Campbell was in the side any further than this week, he would not be number 2. I don't think he will be. He's got Port. Sydney, Grundy's tough, but then he's got Adelaide, West Coast, Essendon, Brisbane is a bit tougher. Richmond, Geelong, Colic, Carlton. It's a pretty good run to end the year. I just think he's got the ceiling. I just think he's the number 2 ruck. The guys I've got in the mix just behind him there, I've got Brodie Grundy, who's been very, very good and has been showing the last 5-6 weeks why we all were keen to start him and we thought what he could do. Like 134, he got the 83 against Freo, but then 105, 119, 103, 133, 122. The reason I didn't have him over a Ryan Marshall, tricky sort of month to come. Freo with the sort of Darcy-Jackson duo. Then he's got Marshall, Cherry, McInerney. Then he finishes with English, Sweet, probably the duo of Cameron and Cox, then the Essendon duo, and then Adelaide. So sort of a good sort of few matches, then a few tough ones as well. So I had him just outside. Tim English obviously has always got to be in the mix. I was pretty sure he had a few good scores right before his bye as well. He was a bit cheaper. Yeah, he's under 900k, which is crazy to think. Yeah, like 116.77, 124. Again, he's just been a little bit too up and down for me to be above a Marshall in the 2. And then the other guy I've got in the mix is Tristan Cherry. Again, he's been very, very good this year, averaging 105 as well, or just was it just under as well? Yeah, just under 104.5. So they're the guys I got. Nank as well, bit of a smoky, just maybe keep on the watch list as a guy that could have a good back half the year. I think he's pretty good before the bye, getting some good scores there. If we have a look, yeah, he's like 100, 141, 188, 96, pretty good. So just a guy that, well, for draft as well, you'd be very happy if you pick him up. He's always underappreciated, Nank, especially in draft. You can always slide and get him. And it's crazy that Witts is averaging 95 as well in his 10 games. So, but they're the 5 for me. The top 5 averaging rucks are the guys I'd be having. And the final position to get to is the forwards. Obviously been very tricky, sort of nailed down outside the top 3. I think there's probably a top 3, then there's another guy that sort of probably cleared himself as a number 4 guy. I would have Flanders as my number 1 forward on the run home. Again, he's just been ultra consistent. Only 1 score below 100 from round 4 onwards when he moved into the back line. And he's also only had the 2 scores as well as that under 110. So he's been really consistent. The one flag is that he played midfield for the full for last quarter in their last game. So it'll be interesting to see with Powell and Sexton back there. does Flanders play midfield more in the back half of the year? Does he go back? Was that just a one-quarter trial? I think it was just for the one quarter. I expect Flanders to be playing in defence remaining of the season, but just something to watch, as he has been obviously midfielder for pretty much all of his career, bar the last 7 or 8 weeks. So, yeah, just one thing to note with him. I've got Heaney at number 2, just ahead of Dane Zorko at number 3. And I've gone Heaney at number 2, more just for the consistent he's just a consistent 100 to 125 a week. Had a poor game the weekend, 86. There's been talk about a bit of a shoulder sort of injury, so that's something to watch. And I guess I've got more faith in him playing every game from here to the rest of the season than Zorko, so that's one thing there. But Zorko is number 3. Obviously, they're 20 points clear of the next forward, so they're the clear top 3. My number 4 is Jai Caldwell. So I brought him in last week. Looked really, really good against West Coast. Has got a good run as well. I've mentioned with Eston as well. Their next month is really friendly, especially to mids like Geelong. They got Collingwood and Melbourne as well. So yeah, Caldwell for me is sort of elevated himself as that number 4 number 4 forward. So I would have him there, and I think he's still a really good tail. I'm sure he'll be touched on in the Trade Talk video. Number 5, I've still got Zach Fisher. He's still got that role. I think it almost will help him with McKercher back in the team, because it seemed to me like Fisher's was still scoring really well and almost scored better when McKercher was in the team, just because they chipped to each other, it just seems. So, like, McKercher went out in that game against Port, I believe. Was it? No. What was McKercher's last game? I'm forgetting. McKercher's last game, I think, was against Gold Coast. Actually, to be fair, they just scored back-to-back 103s. Then he went 121, 112, 150. So maybe not. Maybe that was just me making that up in my head. But I still think Fisher. There's not many forwards that can put up a stretch of 5 weeks of hundreds. So, and I think there is plenty of chance for him to still go over plenty of times over the 100 and the back half of the year. So for me, I've still got him. But again, a flag, just 2 low scores in a row. Not really looking as thirsty as he did in those 5 weeks for the ball. So just something to monitor there. Almost since that West Coast game, really. That West Coast game when he sort of copped that injury late. It's pretty much been since then that he hasn't really scored too well. So just something to note. But he's a guy that I still like. And at number 6, I'm going with Grind Myers. Obviously, there's a few players there that could easily fit in here. But the reason I've got Grind Myers is for his run to finish the season. So had a difficult couple of weeks before his last game. 65, 52, and 70. There is 3 lowest scores of the season, that a really bad patch. And we did flag that could be something that happens. But 2 of those scores were against Giants and Sydney. Tough matchups. But the 52 against Richmond sort of didn't make a whole lot of sense. No marks in that game as well, which was surprising. But his run to finish the year, got a 115 against Carlton. That's a really good score. 9 tackles as well, which was also solid. But Essendon, Hawthorn, Collingwood, Bulldogs, North, Adelaide, Freo, St Kilda, West Coast. I think those matchups are really good. I think Myers could put up some solid scores, and that's what I've got him as my number 6 forward. But there are guys in the mix here that could easily be the number 6 forward out of the whole sort of best 22 is the one position that I could interchange probably 5 players. So for you guys that are in the mix, you've got Alex Sexton. He's probably the guy I would have still had in there. I just think there is too much of a flag of Power being back and coinciding with his lower score for a while. So that's the only reason I bumped him out. If we do see Flanders going to the midfield, or we just see Sexton going about his business and just getting the scores done, he probably would be number 6. But I've just bumped him out just because of that, anticipating that he might be a guy that we all decide to trade out within the next 2-3 weeks. I've also got Liam Baker in the mix as well, playing in the midfield there, and we know that he's got he can score hundreds on his day, so he's a guy I think's got to be in the mix there. Dylan Moore, always getting it done, has got the floor though, that I guess a little bit more of a lower floor than what some of these other forwards have got, but his run coming up is pretty decent. West Coast, Geelong, Freo, Collingwood, Adelaide. Next 5 is pretty good. So, and then he's even got Richmond and North to finish the year. So he's probably going to be a target in the final 2 weeks of the season. So that's why he's in the mix. And again, he could easily be in the 6th with a decent run to finish. And the other guy I got is a bit of a smoke is Isaac Rankin. We've seen when he's playing the midfield, his scores, again, for the whole year haven't been amazing, but just a guy to watch because when he's played midfields look pretty good. He's got getting more of the ball, getting more involved with some +6s around the ground, getting a few more tackles as well. So just someone that could average 85 plus, maybe even hit that 90 range for the back part of the year. I don't think there's anyone I've really forgotten. I guess the only one I'll probably mention that's sort of looked a little bit better in a better role is Toby Green. As I'm an owner, I've watched him a bit more closely. He's getting a bit higher up the ground, a few more CBAs. Just be interesting to note if he can continue that and if you put a few better scores up. But I don't have him as a top 6 and in the mix at the moment. I want to see a bit more. I'd want to see a fair bit more from him before I put him in there. And then it probably is disrespectful to Danaher, who's had a great year. Even Harry Mackay and Jake Waterman, and even Jeremy Cameron you could also throw in there as well. I just worry, and even Shea Bolton as well, but I just worry with the key forwards that they're going to have hit and miss games. That's why I haven't put them in the top 6. But again, these guys are last 2-3 weeks. They got good matchups. You can bring them in for a week and do a few sort of looping and stuff like that if you've even got that ability. So that's why I've got them not in the top 6 or in the mix at the moment. So, but yeah, if we go to sort of the favourites, here sort of this is. These are all the players that we've obviously touched on today, and what I think will be. So plenty of good players here to be looking at bringing into your sides, hopefully for the back part of the year. And I think all of them, but probably a few of the forwards will put up very really good scores for the back part of the season. But let me know in the comments below, guys, if you sort of what you agree with, what you don't, what you think of the my best 22 that I've made here. Hopefully I've got most of it correct and you guys sort of think I'm on the right track. But interesting to see what you guys think. Even put your rolling 22s in as well. Sort of be interesting to compare and see what we're looking like. Maybe the defence will be the one that's pretty different. I think maybe the bottom 2, I think a few people will have a Crisp and a Young in there instead. But I've got a few guys that have got some good runs to come up. So, but yeah, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And as always, if you guys do have a question, then make sure you hit me up on askmeonq.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics as well. Be able to help with all your team dependent questions and everything. Small fee for that one, but it does help support the channel, but also gets you a in-depth answer for your question, audio response. You can send your whole team through and everything like that. So if you want to get involved in that, the link is in the description below. So make sure you smash a like on the video if you did enjoy it, and if you sort of like these sort of one-off ones, and maybe if you want to see a bit more of it moving forward in terms of content and stuff like that, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so we can hit 3K subscribers. And make sure you tune in about 4.5 hours time or so, or about 4 hours time, whenever you watch it. 5 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Western Standard Time, we'll be doing the usual trade talk video, talking through all the most traded players in and out for the week. So make sure you guys tune into that. But for now, guys, I'll catch you guys in a few hours. So I'm out. Cheers.